Hey, everybody, it's Chris Elmore with another edition of the Service Contractor Radio Show, brought to you by Service Excellence Training, where we turn learning into earning. And we're back. Well, how do you say it?
And we're back.
This week, me and my sidekick, Christopher Kalen Loudermilk, Robin, a.k.a. Robin, we're going to continue our discussion on prescriptions today, specifically about handling objections. So stay tuned. All right.
I'm Jordan, you're Pippin. I'm Shaq, you're
That's too soon. Come on, man. Did you just get ready to crack a Kobe joke?
Nope.
Too soon.
I was going to say Coach.
Yeah, whatever.
You're Phil Collins.
Kobe and helicopter jokes are off the table for a while.
At least on camera.
Yes, because we all know who you are off camera. Or do we?
Or do you?
I don't know. So how long has it been since we did a podcast? 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
Together, but we've had them, but it's been 3 weeks.
And what's fun is if you look at the data and the massive amount of emails we've gotten saying, we got to have the Chris is back.
It's massive.
It was my mom.
Yeah. Both of them. Huh?
I'm telling Lieutenant Colonel.
No, both of the emails.
Oh, yes.
With
Yes.
your mom.
Yes.
So I've been to I went to visit a client of mine in Illinois. Shout out to Ernst Heating in Hamel, Illinois.
Hamel?
It's like camel, but with an H.
Okay.
He's making great changes to that business. Third generation company.
That's Dusty, right?
It's Dusty.
Yeah, Dusty's a boss.
Yeah. He's making great changes to that company. So went out and helped him with a little more implementation. And then got to go teach with K-Dub, Kerry Webb, Dr. Kerry Webb.
PhD.
We went out and spoke at the Johnstone Albuquerque group meeting, a dealer meeting they do every year, and then taught one of our classes for 2 days there. And then I came back, and here I am.
And now you're ready to go.
I'm going to go down to Austin on
Monday.
Yes. Because you're going to be teaching the sales class and T-Bear. Terry Barrett.
Going to be rocking.
Yeah, and
tech class.
If you're there, you'll have seen it.
He's had 2 grandchildren in the last week.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's like, hey guys, I'm going to have 2 grandchildren this week. And then he just does.
It's Alabama.
So you won't hear this, but if you're ever in Terry's tech class, make sure you talk about hunting because he loves it.
Yes.
He's a hunting fanatic.
Avid.
I would say avid.
Or an aficionado. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds good.
It's just on that cigar magazine that you get. Yeah, that's what it is. And a quick shout out to Jesse Olson and his team at the Happy Outlet because they always mention the podcast. Every week I do training with them, they mention the podcast.
Jesse Olson, is he related to Mary Kate and Ashley?
No, I don't think so. Jesse, are you related to Mary Kate and Ashley? And what's their sister's name? The one that played the one in the Avengers movies?
They have a sister?
Yeah. I can't remember her name.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley, maybe?
It's Mary Kate and Ashley.
Oh, okay. Mary Kate and Ashley. I don't know what her name is, but anyway, she's a pretty good actress. She can move her hands around like this real good.
I can do that too.
Yeah, so you could be a superhero.
And a hand model.
No. All right, so let's talk about this week. 3 weeks ago, part 1 of this was we talked about prescriptions. And we talked about the things that you needed to do when you were presenting, start with your checklist, go through everything, make sure the customer understands everything, realize that they're going to force buy. They're not in a buying. It's not a fun thing for them. So there's certain ways we present and that kind of things that are part of process to help deal with that. Well, this week, what we want to talk about is we want to talk about objections. Now would you say you spend, the 2 things I spend most of my time training on are disc profiles and adapting process to that and handling objections. Would you say that's true?
I would say it's true. I would also say most people that come to us, that's one of their main things that they want to, man, I need to teach my guys how to overcome objections. Or if you're a team member, man, I really want to learn how to overcome objections. The challenge is most people are afraid to do it.
They're afraid. And you know what? How about this? I'm no salesman. You're not turning me into a salesman.
I'm handier than an ashtray on a motorcycle. I ain't no salesperson.
Well, the crazy thing about it is that objections are a normal part of what we do.
Mm-hmm. In everyday life, not just
Yeah.
our jobs, right?
Yeah. And we're currently going through we've got the book. I assume everybody's going through it. We're going through the Never Split the Difference book by Chris Voss, the former FBI negotiator. Great book, by the way. Check it out. But I think people see when they see handling objections, they see salesy. They see sales tricks.
Yeah, tactics or secrets. That's my favorite. Come to me. I'll share with you my tactics and secrets.
Here's the 3-step process for handling, for doing this, whatever. Okay. Yeah, there is a process for it. But when we talk about objections, we got to think, remember, we go back to the forced buy. Why do people have objections? First of all, people don't have objections just because you're selling to them or you're asking them to buy something. Mm-hmm. They have objections because it's just natural to have objections. Mm-hmm. They don't know you. Stranger danger.
They may be afraid of making the wrong decision.
They don't want to that maybe their personality type is they just have a hard time making decisions.
Maybe they don't trust you, or never have I had happen in my case, they just don't like you.
Yeah, I mean, because everybody loves the lovable sidekick. So why would anybody not like you? Okay, moving on.
That shall pass.
So, but when we say handling objections, you got to understand something, that they come up for natural reasons, trust,
relationship,
any of those things that normally come up. And we tend to only think of handling objections in a sales scenario. Mm-hmm. But hey, if you've ever asked girls out on a date, mm-hmm, you've handled objections.
Well, speak for yourself.
If you've ever tried to get an upgrade on an airplane, you've handled objections.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, go ahead and get it out of your system.
Keep on going, because I could do this all day, baby.
I know you figuratively.
Yes, but you are correct. People, you ask your wife or your husband to do something. You ask your kids to do something.
Yes.
You're handling objections on the reg. It's not just when you're offering your goods or service to someone. It's a very common thing that we deal with on a day-to-day process.
Mm-hmm. And it's anytime you want to get something. Mm-hmm. So the thing you got to realize, okay, let's put it in a technician or an in-home salesperson perspective. An objection usually comes up when we ask somebody to buy something. So that's the context. Mm-hmm. And realistically, if you break it down, no matter what the words the customer uses are, the objections will fall into one of 5 basic forms, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But you got to understand too, sometimes people give you an objection and it's not really, first of all, you can't hear a no. If someone says an objection to you, that's too expensive, and you hear a no, you're done. Because that's not what they said.
No.
But I think we're programmed to think if we ask someone to do something and they have a reason not to, we think that reason not to is a no, mm-hmm, whether it's a legit reason or a fake one. Mm-hmm. We hear a no. So the first thing is you can't hear a no. Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that is when you hear handling objections or overcoming objections, the phrase, don't hear get a yes, because that's not what it's about. So it's not a no, and there's no silver bullet to a yes. You do everything you can to make it more favorable for the person to say yes. That's what handling objections is about.
You're trying to help them make the right decision.
Exactly.
Right? I remember early on, my first government paying job was MCI WorldCom. And this is one of my favorite stories.
So wait a minute. Is that a coincidence that right after you went to work for them, they went bankrupt?
No, because they went bankrupt about a year after I worked for them. They went bankrupt when I left because they couldn't handle all my sales volume loss.
Well, I think probably what it was you put in motion what caused them to go bankrupt.
It's very fair as well. But I was the guy that would call around dinner time and let you know that you were with AT&T and you were paying 5 cents a minute for long distance. And at MCI WorldCom, we could get you 3 cents a minute. And if you signed up with me while we're on the phone, you got a $20 Blockbuster gift card. That's a real thing.
Blockbuster. There's one store left in the world
That was 20. Holy crud. That was 23 years ago.
It can't have been. How old are you now?
38.
And you were doing that when you were 15.
Yeah. I had my worker's permit. I did it so I could get my driver's license early.
Oh, okay. I knew there was an ulterior motive.
Yeah. But anyways, you can imagine the crazy stuff we heard on the phone. Any objection you can imagine. And I wish I would have remembered this guy's name, but we went through some hodgepodge class, and he kind of embedded in my mind early on, when a customer gives you an objection, first of all, they're not telling you no. Second of all, if you believe in your product or service, then you need to fight to help them make the right decision.
Exactly.
Um,
You should also realize that objection, it's not a no. You need to fight for it. But also, it's an opportunity to one or both of these things. You can learn more or teach more. And sometimes you do both. So you just have to be open to the fact that there's an objection and you have to handle it. Now, there's really two types we talk about, really. I mean, sometimes someone says, well, hey, that's a little more than I want to pay. And, they're kind of, that they're buying, they just want to negotiate with you a little bit. So, but you can usually pick those up pretty easy. What it's harder to pick up is whether the objection is real or if it's just what we call a smokescreen. And tell everybody what a smokescreen is.
Smokescreen is essentially a kind of facade.
What?
Visage? Lavella visage? A smokescreen is essentially
a massage?
Yes. After this.
Okay.
Smokescreen is essentially a shield for what their actual objection is. And I find, based on my experience, that most of the time, the real objection, the underlying objection is, that's more than I was expecting on paying. And the other variation is, what I find it mostly boils down to is, I've never had to make this kind of purchasing decision before, and I don't know if this is a good deal or not.
Exactly. So what we've got to do is figure out a way to get through that and figure out which is which. Now, first of all, when we talk about handling objections, what I don't want anybody to hear is we have a trick for that.
No, or a tactic or a secret.
There's none of that. There's a process for it. And I guess you could call it a tactic, but we're not talking about we don't want to have some
super secret sales,
whatever that is.
Yeah.
We don't want to have that, but there's a process for it. But the number one way to handle objections, and when we say handle objections, we want to minimize or eliminate. The number one way to do it is let your process do it for you. Because if we think about the reasons people have objections, they don't trust you, they don't like you, they've never done this before, they don't understand the process, all those things. If you take away all of that, when you get to the end, you're just left with price mainly, right?
Money.
And I don't know can you see the value formula on the board? I don't think it's bright enough, but what does it say?
It says people will buy anything when value of what they're getting exceeds the price that they're paying.
Okay. Is that what that says?
Buy equals value over price.
Okay. So we know that if we can get the value to that point, now you're still going to probably deal with money sometimes. But if money's not the reason, and we don't know yet because we haven't asked them to buy anything, but like where we park our truck when we pull up to the house, how we introduce ourselves. Do we know why we're there, or do we have to ask them while we're there? Do we have floor savers in their house or not?
Right. Press.
Yeah, exactly. You got to press before you can play. And the first P in play is prescription. So you got to do all that stuff. If you press correctly, if you manage those principles correctly, whatever you call your process, then you will have minimized or eliminated objections before they even come up.
For sure.
So people say, well, why do I got to do all that stuff? Just teach me the trick to get people to say yes. And I have to laugh when I hear that, because guess what? There's no trick. There's no silver bullet. If you don't do the press stuff right,
you're going to get objections.
You're going to get objections. You're not going to be able to handle them because you're going to have to backtrack.
Yep. And then you're going to have to sell.
And then, yes, you're going to have to sell hard. And then you're going to have to go to your bag of tricks if you want to get the job. But so make sure you're doing all those things. And here's the thing. Nowhere is, PRESS, prepare, relationship building, evaluate with questions, settle anxiety, system diagnostic. And nowhere in that is one of those going to do it.
No, you got to do them all.
You got to do all of it. And you have to think of it as that percentage increase that you get. And if let's say, sometimes you see commercials with people. I know there's one about an energy drink. I think it might be 5 Hour, where people have the little energy bar above their head that moves.
Yep.
It's not a Rain energy drink, by the way, that Chris is drinking.
Delicious.
But there's that little energy bar.
Mhm.
What if there was a value meter that you could see, and as you went along, you could see that value meter getting up into the green
Or decreasing.
or decreasing? That's exactly right. Because when you get there, they've already put a certain value on the service that you're providing before you even walk in the door.
And guess what? It's typically that value meter's pretty low.
The
expectations are low.
It is. The negative emotions are high. The value meter's pretty low. And so what you want to do is you want to lower the negative emotions and raise the value. And you have to do that through doing these incremental steps. You can't just pick one or two to do. Doing a great credibility statement is not going to win the job for you, because if you do that without doing anything else, it's out of context and it looks like a sales trick.
Yeah, and what this really reminds me of is if you watch basketball players, watch their free throw routine. Guys that have a very solid free throw routine typically have a much higher free throw average because they go up and they do the same thing. They have a process. Baseball's the same way. If you look at guys that make pretty dramatic improvements on their batting average, it's because they do small incremental changes, but they do them every time. They point their toe a certain direction. They grip their bat differently.
A quarter inch higher,
Yep.
quarter inch lower, depending on where the infield's playing. We do all those things. And so that's why the process is so important. And that's why we spent the whole series talking about press. And that's what we mean, press before you can play. Because if you haven't done that and you get to prescriptions, you're not going to get the sale. So you're not going to have to worry about labor, added value, or your future, because there isn't one.
Yeah, your future's carrying my tool bag in my truck.
That's right. So know that the first thing to do to handle objections is to have a great process that helps with the emotional side of it and also builds value incrementally. There's not one thing you're going to do. You've got to have something that does those things. Now, once we get past that, we know we're going to face some objections, and the 5 common objections, we typically, most objections fit in one of these or another, but Brando actually came up with this, and the acronym is STEAM.
Okay.
Spouse, I want to talk to my spouse. The next one is think, I want to think about it. The next one is that's too expensive. The next one is afford, I can't afford it. And the M is I need to get multiple bids, or I need a second opinion.
That's pretty good. STEAM.
Yeah, Brandon came up with that.
Brandon came up with that?
Brando, yeah. STEAM. That's how you remember the 5 most common objections. And
probably stole that from someone.
Now, so those are the 5 most common objections, and we'll talk about some of those in a second. But what are some other objections we hear, and let's show you how they fit into that. The number one that I get when I talk about that for the first time with a group is, well, what about I'm moving in a couple of years?
Right.
Okay. So think about it. If they're moving in a couple of years, what are they telling you? They're saying, I don't want to put more money in this than I have to. Right. So what does that sound like? Too expensive.
Too expensive.
It could be can't afford it, but it's mostly too expensive. What's another one? Waiting on my tax return. Okay. What are they saying when they're saying I'm waiting on my tax return?
Time.
Well, yeah. So time, with the time and money element, is going to be the afforded. It's maybe you can't do it now, so they're waiting for their tax return because it's not too expensive, because they didn't say I'm not going to spend that much on it. They just said I'm waiting on my tax return, which means I don't have the money now, but implying if I did have the money, I would do it. So that's afforded.
Yep.
Right. And you could say another one is the holiday objection. Oh, it's the holidays. Well,
it's affordability.
It's affordability again, or it might be expensive. So I would say that if I had to just generalize, and this isn't always true, this is just my gut, I would say most of the time to think about it, spouse and multiple bids or smoke screens for probably a money objection.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but that's not always the case, and we don't know. So when a customer says, and you may think the affordability and expense are the same ones, they're money objections, but they're not quite the same. But customers interchange those all the time.
Yep.
And so the way we determine an objection and we try to get to the root cause is we use an acronym called LEAP. You want to elaborate on LEAP?
I would love to elaborate on LEAP.
No, don't demonstrate a LEAP because you already hit your toes like 5 times.
And I would jump out of this room. So the LEAP method is really, really simple. First and foremost, listen to what they're saying. Are they really telling you that they want to think about it? Or are they telling you, man, I think that's too much money for what you're offering?
Mm-hmm.
Are they really saying that they want to talk to their spouse, or are they legitimately telling you, I think that's too much money?
Well, the other thing is with listen is I think that when like just what we're going to talk to you about a thing to do and some things to say. And I think what happens when with the listen part of this, you've heard it, you listen to respond. You shouldn't listen to respond. You should listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's a distinction here, because if we say listen and you start to hear the words, I need to think, and then you automatically think that this is what I got to say, this is what they told me to say,
Right.
you're not listening to the customer.
No.
And what we're saying is use your brain, listen for what's unsaid, look at body language, tone, all that, listen to the customer, and you're going to handle the objection.
The second portion, after you listen to really understand what they're saying, is empathize with them.
Not sympathize.
No, there's a big difference. Empathy is I feel sorry with you. Sympathy is I feel sorry for you. And
we don't want to agree necessarily. We don't want to validate what they say in terms of agreement. Like if a customer says, that's too expensive, what's the empathy statement for that?
my go-to anytime I ever get an objection is, Mrs. Jones, I completely understand.
Okay, now
I'm letting them know, hey, I've heard it before, and there's a lot of variations. So
I'd go a step further though.
well, okay.
I completely understand. This is probably more than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, Mrs. Jones, I completely understand. We're talking about a big investment here.
So I want to make sure that we don't magnify it though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go, oh, yeah, I understand. That really is expensive.
And I've heard that in the field. I've heard techs go, I know, Mrs. Jones, that's a lot. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, if we agree with that, we're dead, because we're agreeing that we're overpriced, or we're agreeing that it's too much money. So with the empathy, you let them know you understand and why, but you don't necessarily agree with them. My go-to for it's too expensive or money objection is always, I understand it's probably more than you thought it was going to be, which happens to be almost 100% true, right?
Right.
Because our services are always overpriced when compared to, say, an internet search or the guy down the street who does it on the side, right?
Yeah, always.
They're higher than that. They're not overpriced. They're just more than that for the reasons that everybody probably should know by now, why it costs, up to $300 for a contactor when you can buy it online for $12. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But when you listen and then you empathize and you let them know you understand and why, it means more to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the A.
Ask questions. Questions. The A stands for ask questions. The questions are going to help you isolate. They're going to help you problem solve, which is ultimately the P, solve the problem. If they tell you, I think that's too much money.
Moini?
I was thinking of Des Moines.
Which is French for the Moines.
Des Moines. They tell you that they think it's too much money, right? You need to help them solve that problem. Is it too much money based on their past experience? Is it too much money based on the research that they've done? Is it too much money based on the other bids that they've had before you? So you really need to problem solve, and asking questions can really help you do that. And the book by Chris Voss and some of the stuff we've been doing internally, which is called mirroring, which is a process. If somebody says, Chris, that's too expensive. Mrs. Jones, I completely understand. What do you mean by too expensive?
Yep.
Right.
So we're going to find out. And really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to separate the money and the recommendation. So that's too expensive. I understand it's probably more than you thought it was going to be.
Yep.
But let me ask you, is it the total price, or is there something in this solution that you just don't like? That way it forces them to choose one or the other. Most people, when asked that, will say, oh, no, I want to get it done, but man, that's just a lot of money for us right now. And if you heard the subtlety, what just happened from that's too expensive, it went to can't afford it.
Can't afford it.
They
true
don't think
objection.
That's a true objection, because they said they need the stuff. Now, there's a million ways this can go, and this is a guideline. This is not an actual, this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. You have to listen and use your senses with the customer. But if you do this, it will help you a lot. And so let's do it a different way. Let's do it without doing LEAP, Let's do it as if we're just going to respond with what we think the solution is. So if you said to me, I can't afford, or that's too expensive.
Chris,
And,
that's great, but I just think that's too expensive.
well, we offer financing.
Uh,
Well, what can happen there is, how do I know how do I know he can't afford it, really? Or
Right.
how do I know he needs financing? Because that's not even necessarily for can't afford it. How do I know that's the truth at that point?
you don't,
And
because you don't know that formula.
right. So, but I have no frame of reference for what he thinks is expensive.
Right.
So, and here's an exercise for you to do. You can do it as a tech and just challenge other techs, or if you're a manager owner, listen, do this in your next tech group. Just to illustrate the difference in people's perspective on expensive, ask your group, without talking about it, to write down on a piece of paper how much money is too expensive to fix your current vehicle, not their work truck, but their current personal vehicle. How much money is too expensive? If you got 10 people in the room, you're going to get at least 6 different levels.
Yeah, for sure.
Because expensive is different. I don't even know what Chris's means by expensive right now. I don't know if he means it really is too much more money than he's going to pay, he's willing to pay, or is it more money than he can pay, or is it more money than he thinks he should pay? I don't know. And so if you think about the acronym LEAP, in that example I just did, I didn't listen.
Nope.
Because I heard words, it triggered, I'm going to respond. I didn't empathize at all with him. I didn't ask any questions. All I did was try to problem solve, and I don't know the problem. And so kind of the play on the word leap is, if you take the P from the end and put it at the beginning, it spells plea, which means you're begging. And here's how that comes about. I problem solved too early. I said, we have financing.
Mm-hmm.
What if he got mad and said, I don't need financing? What are you talking about? We never buy anything on credit and all this. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Just call me if you want it.
So, yeah, but I'm listening to him at that point because he's yelling at me, or he's coming back over the top belligerent somehow. Then I'm empathizing with, oh, yeah, I understand. I'm sorry. And then I'm having to apologize. And then I'm having to ask questions about what he really meant. So I don't want to put myself in a plea situation. I want to leap. I'm going to listen. I understand, Chris, it's probably more than you thought it was going to be. But let me ask, is it the total price or something in the solution you don't like? And he's going to have to tell me. And then if he goes, man, I know I need it, but that's just a lot of money for me right now. I'm waiting on my tax return. I understand. Again, I know you didn't wake up this morning wanting to put money in your furnace. But we do have some customers that would write a check for this, and we have others that would prefer to do some financing on it. Where do you see yourself? And then he would answer me.
Oh, didn't know you guys offered financing.
Yeah, we do. Do you want to hear more about it? Of course he does, and we're going to go with that. Now, some companies out there try to take that out by offering the finance price up front.
Yep.
And that's okay. Just beware that might seem a little iffy to some customers, but that's certainly a legitimate process to use. So LEAP is one of these things that it's hard to master or hard to understand in one conversation. But the process is listen to your customer, empathize with them, which means show you understand and how, but don't agree with it necessarily. Ask questions, and then problem solve. We'll do some specific objections coming up in other episodes of the show, because I think that this is a hot button for people. And we want you to, I want to leave you with this. I want you to understand that this is not a trick. This is not a card trick you pull out at a party. This is a legit process that you use because the customer's in that forced buy, the negative emotions, and we're just programmed when we're in a sales situation, that it's a tug of war. And one of the great quotes I heard about sales was from Chris Voss. He does this masterclass series on Facebook. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but he says that when you do things like this, and he's particularly talking about what he does,
Mm-hmm.
and, every guru out there, and if you're another guru listening to this, because I would guess we're gurus. Would you say we're gurus?
I think so, yeah.
I think we qualify. So if you're another guru out there, whatever your thing is, and hey, by the way, you can be on the podcast if you just send me an email.
That'd be great.
So what I think happens is, Chris Voss goes, when you do a process like this to truly understand the other person's stuff, and I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah.
He says, You do these kind of things, and you turn the wrestling match into a dance.
Ooh,
You
that's
like that?
poetic.
It is. Hey, he's a poetic guy. Anyway, but that's what we're trying to do with this. So don't think this is a silver bullet. This is just another way for you to understand objections, where they come from. They're natural. They're going to come up because you're a stranger, you're new, it's a new process, they don't understand it. You're going to have objections. The 5 most common objections: spouse, think about it, too expensive, can't afford it, multiple bids,
Steam.
or a second opinion. Steam is how we remember that. They're going to come up, and you don't know if they're true objections, true conditions. That's what it is, a true condition. A true condition would be, I need to talk to my wife, because literally that's what they agreed to. We're
Yep.
never spending more than this before we talk.
Yep.
That's a true condition. You can't do anything about that. But we have to find out if it's that or if it's a smokescreen, which is kind of that cover story, maybe, because they wouldn't need to do something else. And so that's why we have to leap. We listen, not to respond, but to understand. We empathize, and we can't empathize if we don't understand. We ask questions because we want to problem solve. We don't ask questions to get the yes. We ask questions to find out, do we have a true condition or a smokescreen? If we have a true condition, we can try to problem solve.
That's right.
And we'll talk about some problem solving stuff next time.
Can I rename Steam?
How about this?
Meats. We got the meats.
We got the meats. I think that's taken, but hey, Arby's, and I know you're listening.
Yep.
And especially Ving Rhames, the guy who does the voiceover. I would love Ving Rhames for you to do our intro.
That would be epic. I want the Whataburger guy to do our intro. It would sound something like this.
Go for it.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Service Contractor Radio Show. We turn learning into earning.
What a burger.
Do a Harry Carey intro.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah, you
if
can.
the moon was made of cheese, would you eat it?
If service excellence training was made of cheese, would you eat it? I know I would. And then I'd wash it down with a frosty cold, turning learning into earning.
Okay, we went way off track here. Anyway,
gotta have fun.
Next time, more on LEAP, more on handling specific objections and problem solving. Just so you know, we always going to let you know, our next tech and sales class is actually happening probably before you listen to this.
Yep.
So we're going to tell you about the next one that's coming up. The next one will be in Austin, Texas, and it happens April 27th through the 29th. We're also doing our sales series that same time. That's April 27th through April 29th, Monday through Wednesday. And then on Thursday and Friday, we're doing our owners series.
Which is amazing.
Which that's the class that Carrie and I just did in New Mexico to good reviews, rave reviews, I'd say.
I would say.
We have a lot of people we're still talking to from that and getting help from us after going through that class and really getting their eyes open. So that'll be happening later in that week. So you can go to our website, www.serveextra.com to get more. That's www.servextra.com. And check out this blog or the blog, this podcast. You can like and share it. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Also, email me if you have a topic you'd like us to cover. Email either one of us. My email is elmore, ELMORE, @serveextra.com. My phone number, 254-733-7109. Niner.
Or if you don't want to talk to my sidekick, you can.
You really want to talk to a sidekick.
You can email me at Chris, which is weird. Most sidekicks would have to use their last name for the email address. The Michael Jordan, if you will, would have Chris, CHRIS, @serveextra.com, or the best phone number in the world, 254-723-7459.
So I use my last name because
Chris was already taken.
No, because it makes more of an impact.
Who's going to remember Loudermilk?
Was I supposed to answer? Sorry, it wasn't automatic. Maybe it should be.
That was rude because I've seen what you're doing there.
Hold on.
Okay.
We want to shout out to Dave.
Super Dave. Possibly.
Maybe. Dave. Out in California. Dial One Sunshine. If you're listening, which I know you are, we have already talked to you. But thanks for listening. And what does Dave know, Chris, that we do at Service Excellence Training?
We turn learning into earning.
Bye, everybody.